Ottoman history has been shrouded in mystery for centuries. Could Hürrem Sultan have contributed to the death of the empire's most beloved prince, Şehzade Mustafa? Holding power within these palace walls was never easy. Whispers are dangerous, alliances fragile, and a single word can determine who lives and who dies. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, ruler of a great empire and a man torn between duty, fear, and love, was one of the most important figures of his time. Mustafa, a brave and handsome prince beloved by both the army and the people, emerged from Sultan Suleiman's shadow and was seen by the Ottoman people as the future sultan. So, how did this potential heir end up being strangled to death in a tent during a campaign? Was this truly Hürrem's plan, as it is said? Or were there far more complex intrigues unfolding behind the scenes? Mustafa's education was rich, disciplined, and rigorous, befitting a prince. From a young age, he took lessons in archery, strategy, poetry, and leadership. Wherever he went, he was greeted with affection by the people. They loved him for his commitment to justice and for listening to their complaints and resolving them. He was even more renowned in the army. When Mustafa rode alongside the Janissaries soldiers, he was greeted with enthusiasm by them. Some even shouted that he would be the next sultan. However, in a dynasty based on absolute authority, a popular prince could attract the attention of his enemies as well as his own family. A prince who had the support of the people and the army could pose a threat to the sultan. The throne of a great empire was only for one person, which meant that threats had to be eliminated. Hürrem Sultan, the most influential woman in the empire and Suleiman's favorite, was aware of the rising threat. Hürrem was not just one of Suleiman's wives. As a mother, she needed to protect her children, who could become the next sultan in the future, from the children of Suleiman's other wives. Mustafa was more than just a stepson to Hürrem. He was the greatest threat to her children's lives and her own position in the palace. Rumors began to circulate within the harem. The servants said that Hürrem was trying to weaken Mustafa's authority through intrigue and scheming. Grand Vizier Rüstem Pasha, whose position and security in the palace depended on remaining close and loyal to Hürrem and Suleiman, was an important ally who stood by Hürrem. Rüstem's story was a legend in itself. Despite coming from a modest family, he gradually became the prime minister of the empire, its chief administrator, and one of its most brilliant intellectuals. By marrying Hürrem's daughter, he became a member of the ruling family. Hürrem and Rüstem's interests and goals brought them closer together and formed an alliance. Many in the palace believed that Rüstem saw Mustafa's rise as a threat. He thought that if Mustafa came to power, he would lose his position, and, due to their differences of opinion, he might even lose his head. Some historical sources believe that this entire process began with these thoughts. So, how would they convince Suleiman that his own son had to be killed? Suleiman launched a campaign against Iran in 1553. This created an ideal environment for both war and secret political intrigue. Mustafa was summoned from the battlefield to the Sultan's campaign tent. On paper, it looked like a father calling his son to duty. Some believe that Mustafa was secretly communicating with the Shah of Iran and was likely organizing a future coalition or even an uprising. Many historians believe these letters may be fake, misinterpreted, or exaggerated. Furthermore, Rüstem Pasha is a key character in almost all adaptations of this story. Mustafa answered his father's call despite the dangers. Unaware that his days were numbered, he set off for the tent as a loyal son and prince. Some soldiers in the army whispered that Mustafa could be appointed as the Sultan's successor at this point. However, the atmosphere in Suleiman's tent was very different. He was an old sultan, torn between his fear of a possible uprising and his love for his son. The tent had been carefully prepared for what was to come. To outside observers, it looked like a formal meeting between father and son. But to those in the know, the situation was much darker. Mustafa approached the tent, thinking he would see his father. Unbeknownst to him, he was being led into a trap. When Mustafa entered, he did not see a loving father. Instead, he was confronted by executioners carrying out the Sultan's orders. Canvases and cautious silence concealed what happened next. No eyewitness fully recounted what transpired. Most historians agree that Mustafa resisted the executioners. The prince of the empire was strangled to death after a brief and futile struggle. The camp outside fell silent. The soldiers were aware that something terrible had happened, but very few dared to speak honestly about it. News spread among the people that Prince Mustafa, once thought to represent the future of the empire, had been executed on his father's orders. These events were perceived as treason, especially among the Janissary soldiers. The soldiers were filled with grief and anger at the death of their beloved prince. Storytellers and ordinary people in the cities quickly identified a culprit. Hürrem Sultan planned Mustafa's death to protect her own sons. The rumors within the palace were even more poisonous. Rumors about Hürrem and Rüstem had begun to surface. Regarding Hürrem herself, it is unclear from the sources whether she cried, whether she was happy or relieved. Her true feelings are still obscured by rumors and propaganda. However, Rüstem Pasha clearly had to pay the price. To quell the people's anger, Rüstem Pasha was removed from his position. Others argue that blaming Hürrem is an easy way out. They say Suleiman made this decision with cold logic for the sake of the empire's continuity. Hürrem undoubtedly wanted her sons to be strong and secure, free from the threat of living in Mustafa's shadow or being eliminated. Nevertheless, Suleiman had his concerns. He had witnessed uprisings in the past and knew that a prince beloved by the people and with significant military support could eventually pose a great danger to him. Therefore, Mustafa's murder may not have been the act of a single culprit, but rather the tragic result of the simultaneous collision of many people's anxieties, desires, and silent calculations. Whether Hürrem Sultan actually helped in the murder of Prince Mustafa remains unanswerable today. Letters, historians, and later accounts often contradict each other. Over time, it has become nearly impossible to distinguish between verifiable facts, rumors, and pure legend. Mustafa is still seen by many as the lost sultan, the prince who should have taken the throne, but instead represents injustice and political paranoia. Hürrem, meanwhile, is seen by some as a great strategist and by others as a dangerous schemer. History will never forget her. I leave it to you to decide whether this was a ruthless palace calculation or a mother protecting her children. Let's meet in the comments.